Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome to Creator Chat, which is basically a series where I'm going to chat to the community's favorite or up-and-coming creators about their journey, their style, and their work in progress.
I'm proud of you.
Hey, Subwoofer, what's up, man? We're basically just going to sit in a call. We're going to build each other something. But first, I got to ask you for a word, Howard. Give me a word, any word.
Glass.
Glass. Okay, so we're gonna build each other a glass-themed level. It's gonna be awesome.
I have to make glass now. Why did I say that?
We're making glass. Anyway, how are you, Subwoofer?
I'm well. I'm doing well. Swamped with school stuff, but that's Jay chillin'. That's almost done.
Playing a lot of GD or not?
Doing both, really. Like, I'm finding time to do GD stuff on top of doing the school stuff, fortunately. It's not like one is taking over the other.
That is good.
Yeah.
But you've been doing a lot this year, obviously. You've been playtesting 2.2, making 2.2 levels. You know, there's a lot going on that I feel like the community doesn't really know a lot about, and I was wondering where you're at, really, with the game. Like, what's going on? That's my question.
So I graduate this next semester, and I don't know if that's going to give me more time to build or take away all of my time to build.
I see. So you're in limbo?
Once I get a job. Kind of. Currently, I'm trying to build as much as I can. Like I finished Citadel. I finished Ioma. I'm back on Space Invaders.
Let's go.
That's my current, that's my level project right now.
That has been work in progress for a while, right?
It has. And it was interrupted with wanting to do an NCS thing and with getting a whole event level to build. But we back on it.
I want to talk about that for sure. That's crazy. That is insane.
Yeah, it's very silly.
How does it feel being an event creator?
It's fun. Honestly, feels not much different from just like finishing a regular level.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, I don't know, it wasn't anything that I wouldn't do in a normal level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a purple castle. Like, I'm gonna be so honest, that's the 4th purple castle I've built.
Is it actually?
Yeah. Well, some of them are like Mega Collab parts.
Oh, I see.
But altogether, yeah, that makes it 4.
It felt brand new, though, I have to say.
Yeah, I try to do something different, I guess. I wanted to focus more on like actual castle gameplay, because I feel like the other castle stuff I've done, it's really just the environment as a castle.
Yeah.
It doesn't really focus on the actual castle gameplay elements, that kind of stuff.
I see. Because with that level, Citadel, I really like the section with the spike balls going over the ramp in the swing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that section was so cool. Like, that just felt so insane to play through. I have to give credit for that.
I'm glad that had the effect that I wanted it to have, because when I was initially making it, I was like, the only way to do this is frame by frame, and I really can't afford to mess this up, or else it's gonna break the illusion really bad. And it was my first time making a rolling ball that does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I had no idea if it would turn out well, but people liked it, so I'm glad that worked out.
Well, you have some experience animating things, right? Like you're familiar with Blender and stuff like that. So
yeah, and so I get keyframes, and with Blender it's different because it's significantly easier to, if you want to do a rotating ball, to get a ball and then rotate it, and then that's your keyframe, because Blender was built to do that kind of stuff, but GD was not built to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so having to take a spike ball and like animate out the individual spike faces, yeah, it wasn't fun. It was far from
I'm guessing
fun.
It took a long time.
It took a good bit.
Yeah.
The level itself didn't take very long. It was like 2 months about. It was literally like between Dioma and that coming out, that's about how long it took for me.
Oh, I was expecting like the whole event thing to be much more of a rush for time.
The events so far are really, really good. I love everybody's level.
Do you wish you went later so you could spend more time on some of your other projects, or do you think it was well timed?
I think it was well timed. I don't think there's anything in that level that I would change. I'm happy with how it all went.
Do you often feel that way?
Not really. I guess it's been a while since I've like fully finished like a level and I've felt like that is why I think that way. Dioma, I wasn't the happiest with.
Yeah.
And that's just because like I wanted to be working on like school stuff. I didn't want it to occupy all my time. I wanted to get back to Space Invaders.
That level's
That's
like
a
the
lot of
final
what it was.
boss of your levels.
It is. Oh, it is. It is. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
spending a lot of time on it, and a lot of people ask like, "Oh, where is it? Where Space Invaders?" It's like I am fighting so hard to get that thing done.
That's gotta be a lot of pressure, though.
Pressuring, sure, to get it done. It's not that I don't think that I can't get it done. I absolutely can. It's just going to take a long time because of all of the things that I have planned for it. I have a lot of things planned for that level. Like a lot.
Still, like you're talking about plans, and you've been building for a long time, right? So that's.
Oh yeah, I mean
that's very interesting.
I've been building for a long time, but in realistic terms, the length of building has been like maybe like 5-6 months. But like for the scope of that level, I still have a lot that I want to do. That's not nearly as much time as you might think it is for what I want in this. But it's going to take a while. I don't want to give a ballpark estimate of when I would have it done, just because I don't want to make promises. If there's anything, I regret, I guess, previewing it too early, because I showed people it and now everybody's like, where is it? And I don't know how to tell people like, hey, I'm trying really hard to get this done, but I don't want to pass up the opportunity to do an event level. I couldn't tell people that.
That's gotta be so much pressure. Just like you have a whole other project that you gotta finish first, and then everyone's like, well, where's the other project? And you're like, dude, just give me a chance.
Yeah. Anybody that's watching this, I'm really, really going to finish that level. It's just going to take a lot of time. I'm doing my best to get that done.
And what you said with like releasing levels, even though you feel like some of them like aren't done, I totally relate, because I've had projects where I'm just like, dude, I just want to move on. Like, I don't build like this anymore. Like, I've started other projects, my style's changed, and it's just like, and then people ask for levels on the other style, and it's just like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, some levels on my channel are like totally dead, and I'll just occasionally get reminded about them, and I'm like, oh gosh. Like, dude, I just completely left that level out to dry, and it's just uncontrollable.
Yeah, there's a couple of levels that I wish I got around to doing. Like, I wish that I had time to do a Space Gauntlet entry, but honestly, this time I probably don't.
Oh. Hey, that leaves room for some other people in the Gauntlet, though.
It does. It does. That's to say if I even won, because the competition nowadays is crazy, man.
It is insane.
Nuts.
It is insane.
I don't care if this sounds like cope or whatever. I am so happy to be a part of a community with so many people that just like blow whatever I have out of the water.
Yeah, like it is just so fascinating to watch every time.
I don't keep up crazy with all the creators in the community, so when somebody that I haven't necessarily heard of does something nuts, it's really, really fun to see.
It gives you something new to be excited about, for sure.
It does, and it makes me happy that whenever I have an idea for a level and I get sad that I don't end up actually executing that idea, I see sometimes that other people will do that idea, or they'll do the thing that I was thinking of doing. And that doesn't make me sad that I didn't do it and that somebody else did. That makes me happy that somebody else did my idea, because that means I didn't have to do it.
Like it was lived out in someone else's vision, and that's good enough.
Yeah, and that's so good with me.
Yeah. I asked on Twitter for some other questions. We have Colon specifically here asking where your actual art style comes from. How do you invent objects? Like, you make really clean tile sets. Like, where do you get inspiration from? Like, how do you know what to make or how to make it?
So I obviously get a lot of inspiration from Rob. I think the art style for this game is really unique compared to other games that let you build in the way that this game does. Other games that I'm thinking about, in the context of a game with a level editor this insane, is Little Big Planet, like Mario Maker, those kind of games. This game has a considerably unique art style compared to those, and Rob's tiling for a lot of his assets, I think, just fits the kind of art that I like. Initially, it wasn't that way, though. Initially, a lot of the artists that I liked were Serpunge, JF, Knots, Rafer, all those people.
So there are creators involved. Interesting.
So yes. Yeah, loved art creators. One of my biggest influences when I first started creating, like 7 years ago, was Mannix. And it's just because I watched his streams a lot. I watched him build. I saw how he built just from watching his streams, and I was like, I can probably try and figure it out like that.
I wouldn't have guessed particularly Mannix, because Mannix's style is so much different to yours. But I'm assuming it's like over time you get more comfortable, right?
It's weird because I think over time both of us have actually crossed paths in a lot of ways when doing different art styles, but we both ended up spinning back to Rob, and I think he's to blame for that. A while ago, when GMD Deep Space was like first announced, that was like the original series, not Deeper Space. I was on board for doing a level in that, and because of that, I had to learn how to do Rob's style because I liked the way his blocks looked. I had made a Meltdown kind of styled level. I was like, I could do this. It didn't look that good. It wasn't that good. It was my first attempt at doing that kind of thing. It's Sky Strike on my account. It's not good. I wouldn't call it that.
Can I throw it up on screen?
You could. Watching everybody else in that series make a level in that style made me realize I like this style a lot more than most other styles. And so even after Deep Space, I continued to make Rob-styled stuff. I made Work, I made Adventure Time, I made the entire The series was kind of based on Rob's style, but it was learning that I really like this style a lot and incorporating it with the art style that I had gained from just developing myself and looking at other art creators, that I realized that both of these styles can absolutely work together. That's a lot of the block design in Citadel is based off of that kind of Rob style tiling intertwined with what I would think is a lot of like Zender looking stuff, or just like focusing on higher detailed art without necessarily using as much glow.
So it's like a fusion of styles and then like leaning into the things that you enjoyed making the most, or the things that you thought you could build the best. Like how does it work? Because for me, I build what I know I can build, even though I do find it more fun to experiment, if that makes sense. Like if I'm into a project, I don't want to mess up the project by making something terrible, so I end up just playing it safe. And it kind of like hinders my style. But I was curious, like which way do you take it?
I think about what's possible with what I'm good at. I don't want to do anything for a larger scale project like something like Space Invaders or with Citadel and actually do a style that I don't think I can do really well. But I still really want to experiment, and I'll do experimental levels sometimes. Like Red is Bad was a completely experimental level. Flea was experimental and just like a goofball of a level. I enjoy experimenting. I would consider Locomotive experimenting because most of the blocks in that weren't really things that I do. It was more so experimenting with like platforming gimmicks and all that kind of stuff. But for larger scale projects, I don't want to experiment that much.
I see. So it's kind of like when it's appropriate, you'll do it.
Yeah. Getting experimental with my style doesn't mean I'm not innovating. Or I'm not trying to. I would consider Citadel not experimental with my style at all, but I did try to do some funny things with it, like the split screen thing, or the spike ball thing, or the climbing up the tower at the end thing. I don't want to change the style, but I do want to make the level memorable. And if I don't do anything that doesn't make the level memorable, you're just going to forget the level exists.
That's actually a great point, because I feel like, at least for me, I always have parts of my levels that I remember, or like I'm very fond of, and then I have a couple of parts that I hate. And I think if you go into a level and be like, okay, I want the whole experience to be memorable, you're less likely to have those kind of flop parts.
Yeah, that is what upsets me about kind of nothing burgers. Is I have no better way to describe it, but levels that stay memorable are levels that at the very least try to do something unique. Sometimes in attempting to do something unique, it doesn't end up looking good. I've seen like hundreds of examples. There's so many levels in the Magic tab that you look at, and are they executed perfectly? Absolutely not. Do they have charm because they don't actually know what's like standard and rated levels, and they just kind of miss the mark on a lot of beats? Yeah, that is charm. Those are levels coming from creators who aren't necessarily copying everything like word for word. Even if it isn't executed well, it does end up standing out from a crowd, intentional or not. I really, really, really like the Magic tab, and I comment on a bunch of people's levels that I don't think should be rated, but show somebody trying really well,
Yeah.
and I really want them to keep going because I'm certain that with more execution they could do like really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, like, I feel like being a mod, at least, and you say you like a level, there's a lot of people that are just like, okay, well, send it, and you're like, well, not really. Like, there's plenty of levels that I enjoy, like in my level request series, for example. I sometimes will really enjoy a level, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to send that because I enjoy it for reasons that aren't the same as like the rating system or whatever. Like, there's a bunch of different reasons. On twitter.com, you have these discussions or like these debates about, oh, raw levels are bad and they're just levels that aren't like polished and it sucks and people pretend to like them and stuff. But I'm one of the people that enjoys those levels genuinely, and I think what you're describing is kind of like where raw or like charm comes from, because I feel like a lot of people misunderstand the word as like, okay, well, it's just a level without the cherry on top, right? It's just like a rough idea. And that's sometimes true, but I don't know, I get more out of those kind of levels than like polished design levels personally. But that doesn't mean I'll send design levels less than raw levels, if that makes sense.
It's hard to describe that feeling to people who don't know that feeling. The last thing I want to sound like is elitist and be like, oh, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it. You haven't been playing this game for 5 years.
Yeah.
You wouldn't understand. That is a really strange feeling to understand. And to a majority of the people that you say, I like this level because it's not executed well, that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and I get that. At the end of the day, like, execution is what I'll send a level for. If a level is executed well, that's important. And that's important to a large majority of the community. Is the level executed well? Is it buggy?
Because at the end of the day, you're playing it, right? You're playing it for rewards. Like, it's got to be something that comes across pretty well for the rating system, at least.
In similar vein, I let people know in real life what I do. Like, I am a game designer in real life, and so if I do game design stuff in Geometry Dash, I'm gonna tell people about it.
Yep.
Like, I've told my workmates, like, my boss knows about it. My boss plays video games with his son, and he talked to his son about me because his son was interested in like making video games, as is most kids who like play video games when they're young. They play a game and then they're like, I could probably make one of these. He talked to him about me, and he was like, how complicated is like the Geometry Dash editor? And I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, realistically, compared to other editors, it's not that complicated. It can be. That's not to say that it isn't. It's very funny getting to tell people in real life what I do. Because I never thought I'd get to a point where I'm doing that.
It's a bit different between you and I, because I also tell people what I do. But in my perspective, it's more about like showing people how it works rather than doing something like really cool with it, at least in my opinion. The reason I do YouTube is because I think it's fun to show people how to use the editor. It is always a strange one being like, yeah, I make levels in GD, and then you show them the editor and they're like, what? And I'm like, I swear it's not that complicated.
It is slightly different, but I will argue that even in showing off something cool, ultimately I do want to do the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Where I find some cool way of doing something, and then people see how it's done. And then in showing people how something like that is done, I'm effectively doing what you're doing. It's much less of a video tutorial kind of thing and more of a demonstration. That is to assume that people who play my level actually look at the level in the editor. Not a good thing to do, by the way. My editor's a mess.
I think, in general, looking in the editor can be a good way to learn how something's made. But it was definitely more so the case in 2.1 than 2.2. Because sometimes I look at a 2.2 level and I'm like, what is, like, literally what is happening?
The expansion of the editor has allowed everybody to build in completely different ways.
Yeah,
and so
I
everybody
absolutely
has
agree.
different formatting for all of their stuff. I use a lot of the symbol objects, like the single particle objects. Each of those single particle objects like mean something to me. And so I'll use those to
Really?
symbolize different things.
Wait, that's actually so cool.
Not every single one of these, of course, because there's like 100. Like, I'll use the same kind of warped spiral object for like a teleport area. Area move, area opacity, and area pulse, those all have their individual symbols for something. Yeah. And I put everything on the hide extra menu, so that if I want to toggle everything off and then toggle everything back on again, I can do that with F6.
Yeah.
It makes it really good for organizing that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, nobody else works like that.
Yeah.
Or if they do, not everybody does. Navigating every other editor is difficult to do, especially when trying to figure out how to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, I think for me, the way I keep creating is actually down to the fact that I just have my comfort mechanisms where I can kind of autopilot like what I'm doing right now at this level. Where when you get comfortable with creating, it just kind of just comes naturally. There's no real way to like force your way to certain things in the editor, I think. Like you can't just wake up and be an effect creator or a design creator or anything.
You're always going to have a little bit of your style and everything. Like even the hard style switches that I've tried to do with like Red is Bad, even some of the older design stuff that I did when I was on Void Squad, I looked back recently, those still have good bits of art in them.
I mean, I kind of have to ask you who the most influential creator is.
That is a significantly tougher question that I think a lot of people tend to lead that question off as. It's really difficult because I could very easily say Funny Game, and say that the effort that he put into his levels showed the ceiling for this editor is way beyond what people thought it was, and the impact that he had through his stuff was far and beyond the craziest stuff that I think most people have seen. But you could also say like Optical and Knots and just both of those creators I would credit to the same amount of change that they've left on the scene, because they, I think, were pioneers of the most replicated art style this game has ever seen.
That's true.
I would say modern nowadays is significantly more apparent than a lot of what old design stuff used to be. Back in early days of 2.1, a lot of levels were that kind of design, were that stuff that people make fun of now. People make fun of glow design, or like generic style or whatever that was, is what a lot of people did back in early 2.1. But now when we're in early 2.2, I'm seeing a lot of either this Rob style with the pixel art blocks, just because there's like thousands of those and you can change them up however you want, or this modern style that is replicated, I think, because it is significantly easier to replicate than a lot of other art styles, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think that both of these styles, regardless of its pixel art or modern stuff, I think they both look really good. I think
Levelution was underrated, man. Like, it got so much hate at the time, but Optical was spitting. So basically, in 2.0, it was 2.0, right?
Yes.
Optical made a video that was like, I'm starting a thing called levelution. He was like, levels are like too high effort, they're too polished. We need to focus on like simplicity and fun to play, and not gimmicky, but how do I say what I'm trying to say here?
The idea, I think, was you should spend less time on your level so that you can actually get it finished.
Yeah. That's like pretty much it to a T, and a lot of people were like you're encouraging bad slop levels and like.
Yeah, that's what I think it largely was. Is you're encouraging people spending less time on levels, and therefore I have to play worse levels, so it sucks. Is usually a lot of what the argument on that was. I don't actually, in terms of levelution, encourage the sentiment. I get it. I understand it is good, I think, to finish a level rather than not finish a level.
Yeah.
Even if you're not crazy proud of it, I think that by producing something and putting it out there, you're doing yourself a better service by allowing it to have that criticism and let people make suggestions if you're looking for that. I would recommend it. If you're not looking for that, don't do it. I don't care. You can choose to not publish your level. That's fine.
It depends on what you want, but I do think it is. I personally think it was a good idea when it was overhated.
I think it was definitely overhated, but I agree with you should try and get your level finished. You should do what you can to get it done. Yeah. I disagree with the idea that you should put significantly less time than you think you need to put into something. That unfortunately creates a walking, talking contradiction out of myself of, oh, you agree with the idea, but you don't like how it's done, so then what do you do? And that's where you need to be more persistent with working on a project over a long period of time. That's where I lie on that. If the idea is that you don't want to rush something, but you do want a level out, you have to be persistent with projects over a long period of time. And
I don't
for
do
me for me, my example of that is Space Invaders, because that level isn't out yet, and it's not going to be out for a very long time. But I have been consistently on and off with that level, and I've been consistently on and off with projects in this game for the past, like, 7 years now. For the, I guess it was 8, because I'm counting the 7 years that 2.1 was out, and the 1 year that 2.2 was out. So dang, 8 years. But I have made so many projects that have taken so much time to get done. The entirety of Better Than Reality took about a year to get all those levels done.
That was peak. That was actually so peak.
That series came out in 2020, and I think about that. That's 4 years ago.
Gosh.
That series came out 4 years ago. that was such a cathartic feeling, getting all of those things done, and then being like, okay, I can stop for a moment. I've been consistently on all of these levels for this long. I can chill. It is difficult. It is why levelution became a thing, I think, because one of the most difficult things that you can do is not drop a level. That's the most difficult thing that, like, every creator does. Is you open a level, you put down a couple ideas, and then you close the editor, and you're like, all right, I'm never touching that thing ever again.
Yeah.
And everybody does it. I do it. All of my friends do it. Every single person I know that creates does that.
It's normal. It is very normal.
It's absolutely normal to pick up a level and then never touch it again. And finding the motivation to actually work on those levels is really, really hard. The only thing that has really kept me going when working on a level and, like, really wanting it done is showing it to friends.
I was just about to bring this up after, like, what you were just about to say. I think I know what you're gonna say.
I actually don't know if you do know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say, though. Getting that group of friends and continuously showing them the progress that you're making and getting feedback or just getting positive reimbursement on what you're doing has been one of the strongest pieces of motivation for me to continue finishing stuff.
Wait, that's the complete opposite of what I thought you were gonna say.
What did you think I was gonna say?
I read about creators all the time. Dude, I make something, I show my friends, and then I get, like, adrenaline of having something be shown and people saying it's good, and then they stop working on it. Either because of pressure that they're not gonna, like, top it, or just because they've released part of it, right? Like they've previewed it and people have seen it, so it's like, okay, well, I gotta completely restart the creative process now, or like something along those lines. I feel like personally that kind of like progress, like showing your friends stuff, it can either be the best thing that ever happens to you as a creator or the worst. And I don't know, I feel like when I start a level, I upload a video, I'm like, okay, that's like part of it done. You know, that's like part of the fun of making a project for me is like done, is the fact that, okay, people have seen it. Like it's no longer something that I'm gonna be like working on behind the scenes because it's kind of already out there now. So it's interesting how there's like two sides of a coin there.
I think what it is, when I show this group of friends the stuff that I'm doing, it's different from showing a larger audience what I'm doing.
I see.
And so because of that, when I show my friends what I'm doing and I talk about like plans on release, or I talk about how I'm showcasing this to my audience, it's a different kind of release when I show them that.
I see.
Because I'm kind of telling people what my plans are instead of showing people and then feeling like, well, I've shown people and now I have to reevaluate what I'm doing for the rest of this because I have to top what I've previously shown people.
Oh.
I've shown a very, very small percentage of the people that could possibly see what my project is. And because of that, there's so many more people that haven't seen anything that I'm doing at all, or haven't heard of any of this. And so because they haven't heard of any of this, that's a million new people who will get to experience the thing that you showed your friends that do think that it's cool for the first time.
Yeah.
And because of that, I now really want to finish what I have so that that group of people that haven't seen anything that I'm doing will get to eventually see what I'm doing.
I think you just solved some of my... This is like a therapy session all of a sudden where I've told you about an issue, you've made me like recontextualize, like reevaluate everything I was just saying.
I get encouraged when I show friends stuff and they really like it. And to some people who don't build, I feel like that is like a, yeah, obviously people say that they like it and then you get happy. But I do understand showing people something that you've done and not being able to work on it and feeling disappointed because you haven't been able to continue that kind of trend that you were going on. And like your friends may be kind of sad that something that they liked isn't going to be released. I had a lot of doubts after Dioma came out, where I was like, dang, this was a level that I actually did feel pretty proud of, even though I know that there could have been some stuff that was different. Ultimately, I was pretty proud of it, but there is just so many other creators who have topped me on this one, and for the results of it, I was like, dang, there are so many good ones, I have to step up my game. A lot of creators look at themselves like that, and they look at the projects that they're making right now, and then they look at like the most recently legendary thing, or like a mythic or whatever, they get discouraged. They look at that stuff and they're like, I need to step up my game, or I'm not going to be that good.
It's sometimes me.
The ideas that I have in my head I can't put down on paper are definitely roadblocks and that kind of stuff, and that you get a lot of brain fog during the creative process from looking at other people's stuff and comparing it to your own. I don't think that's a bad thing to look at somebody else's project and feel discouraged of your own. I think that it can inhibit your ability to get something done, as it has stopped a lot of people that I know from finishing projects that they have wanted to work on. But that is kind of how the competitiveness of the creating scene like works.
Do you have creators that you feel like are competition to you, where it's like, okay, you just dropped a sick level and now I am gonna make a sick level? With 2.2 and like effect levels being kind of not gentrified, but like made easier with triggers and stuff like that, I do see things that would be similar to my 2.1 style, let's say, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to make a level that's like cooler to like prove myself still, if that makes sense. I know it sounds so douchebaggy to call it competition, but I feel like it's a thing.
There is, in a sense, you could call it competition.
Yeah, it's not a good name for it, or it's not a good word for it at all.
That's the thing is, even though it is ultimately, I think, a competition, I don't see it as one. Because I don't really care to compete, I guess, for it. Like, I want to do things that impress people. And I have people that we have similar styles and we swatch off of each other and we try to do the next cool thing in that particular style, but I don't necessarily consider ourselves competitors. It's more of a collaborative effort in that I don't think any of us in any way, because a competition to me is you're willing to triumph over others.
Yeah, I don't feel like anything is that way.
Down
just
to
to clarify.
I don't think anything is like that. No, I don't think any of the creating community is doing an attempt to put others down for your own benefit or stealing from others or taking ideas. There hasn't been any of that I've seen from other people. It's just been positively building off of what other people have set precedent or what other people have shown as like techniques. So people take those techniques and they use it for their own stuff, and I don't think people discourage that kind of thing.
Yeah, you put it in a much better way than I did. I sounded almost like evil.
To prove yourself in the kind of group that you're in is difficult. Not saying like specifically you, but just like in general, proving yourself in a category that you put yourself in. Like I would say you're effect creators or strange glowy take on like modern stuff. That's the kind of group of people that you're competing against. That's not necessarily a competition though. You just have other people that you need to prove that you are consistent with.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. It's difficult standing out sometimes. I'm building something pretty basic, like anyone could do this, at least for me. Like I always wanted to do different things, if that makes sense. And then I see people do different things better than me, and I'm like, man, I wish I was that cool. But it's not like, okay, I'm gonna go and
that's how I
go
feel
and destroy him.
I look at like the latest Yo Read thing, and I'm like, damn, how, dude?
Yeah.
I think this is partially why I liked Rob's style so much. Whenever Rob released a preview of anything, I was always amazed. I was always blown back. I think everybody always is whenever Rob previews anything cool, everybody's like, oh my god, how did he do this? Or that thing looks sick, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I look at that and I go, I want to give people that same feeling when they look at this thing that I do.
Yeah.
And so I try and come up with alternatives to what that person might do. Like if I'm copying Rob, I try and come up with weird Rob gimmicks that he didn't do but might do. A lot of it was tiling, I think. I don't think I necessarily went off the deep end with gimmicks. There was one thing that I did that I tried to make work, but I didn't have the time to perfect it in Dioma. One of the earlier versions of Dioma had a gimmick to it. Some of the orbs in this were release orbs. It was a strange gimmick that I felt if this level was in a gauntlet, people would kill me. They would set me on fire. And I got a lot of playtesting, and Colin was very helpful in that because I asked him to look at that gimmick and tell me if that gimmick was good. And although I think that the idea is good, it's just too difficult with what the limitations were and what the scenario was, is if that was a gauntlet level, for people to be happy with it. If it wasn't a gauntlet level, if it was its own little short gimmick thing, I think people would like it.
Yeah. There's a lot of like negative GD comments lately. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. Oh, there's so many.
It's so dumb. Like a lot of it is very unnecessary, and it's becoming very normal that if you can't sight read a level, then it's not a good level, and I don't really like that.
There's two kind of perspectives that I see on that. On one hand, I think a lot of the people who are like, I can't sight read this level isn't good, or like, you need a lot more playtesting because I died to this orb that I clicked late even though I shouldn't have, are in a sense justified, I think. Because these are people who have played the game for years and years now and are used to levels being kind of easy to go through on their first try, and for a lot of the gameplay and things to be streamlined and kind of correct you if things are going wrong on your path to an extent to where it's impossible to mess up. And I understand people that play levels all the time dying to something that doesn't seem fair is frustrating.
Yeah.
It is very, very frustrating for something like that to happen when normally you beat a level and there's no problems at all. But the other argument that I would make, and the argument that I side with, is Geometry Dash is a rage game. And this is a game where if you make the slightest mistake, you have to restart the level from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that is frustrating inherently. That
Yeah,
is
I was going to say that it is an inherently flawed game.
It is inherently, it is inherently a flawed game because it is trying to be frustrating in that sense. It is literally based off of the Impossible game, a game that was built to make you pissed. The game is frustrating to people. Surprise, surprise. A lot of hate that I think people get on levels nowadays is because we have forgotten that this game is inherently a frustrating game. If there were no comments at all, and there was just videos of levels, things would be fine. But because we have a comment section, and we have a listed creator for who made the level, as a player, you now have somebody to target.
That's true.
Something sucks.
Yep.
If a part of a regular game sucks, you go to the Steam reviews and you complain.
And a lot of people won't go out of their way to do that.
Because a lot of people might not go out of their way to do that. It's really funny seeing like the fast menus thing, where it just cuts all the transition time.
Yep.
The speed that you can go from dying to a stupid part in a level to the comment section of the level.
Yep.
And just spouting whatever you want to spout is literally instant.
Yeah.
It is instant. Because of that, it has become really easy to go to somebody's comment section and be like, this sucks, I hate this, and not consider the fact that you're talking to a human being who tried their best to make something good, and that despite the dozens and dozens of people who are shouting about how bad the gameplay is, you can't change all of the gameplay of a level. That's not going to change. You can't tell the person that the gameplay sucks and then they suddenly get good at gameplay. A lot of the players of this game are children. When you're young and frustrated, what do?
Stupid
what do you
things.
do? You can't break things, although sometimes they do and sometimes it's really funny. But what you can do is you can go into the comments and say, this sucks, I hate this, die, and you get away with it because a million people are doing it and there's really nothing stopping you. Even if it breaks the rules of the game, fine, people get comment banned for it. There's just so much that it's kind of impossible to stop.
In 2.0, when the community was smaller and a lot of the games community was like on YouTube and stuff, you get a lot of comments on previews that were very positive. But then nowadays the community is like more widespread and there's like, as you said, you can get to the comment section in like 0.2 seconds. There's less of a personal connection between a creator and the comments sometimes because some creators feel scared to look at their comments because someone has put, oh, the gameplay is terrible, like blah, blah, blah. But it used to just be so much more simple, man. You would upload a preview, you get a couple of nice comments on YouTube, and that would be it. And it would be like, awesome. Nice. We did something good today. We made a good level.
What I think it is because the game has a bunch of children in its audience, that is not much different than how it used to be. It used to have a large audience of younger people. It's just now it is really large. Now it is massive. I wouldn't be able to ballpark numbers on like the ads that or the amount of views something got, but I think compared to stuff like I Spy with My Little Eye, we've reached such like a global audience. Like the Geometry Dash Discord server has like 1 million people.
Doesn't it have like the maximum number of people?
It had the cap raised like several times.
Oh my gosh.
Because it reached the max like a bunch, and it kept asking for the cap to be raised because people kept joining. There's been more responses to last year's awards than like any other year ever. Like,
Yep.
so many people are participating in this community nowadays than, like, ever before.
Whenever someone gets shown a GD level, people always say, I didn't know there was a community.
The small percentage of those people who do actually actively play the game because they saw this game as a challenge and they want to do it, that's me. I was part of that small percentage. I first started this game when I saw PewDiePie play it, and I was like, he sucks at this game. I can do way better than him. And I did, and now I'm here.
And you did. You showed him.
Is there any shotgun questions we can get straight through?
When you beta tested 2.2, how much time did you spend learning everything new from the editor when building your first 2.2 level?
I did my best to learn everything that I could. Literally everything that was new, I tried incorporating in some light. Exception to that rule, I think, was keyframes. Keyframing was too expansive of a system for me to want to incorporate, but that said is I did end up learning every system.
Oh, this is so pretty. And the camera work is good too.
Your background is so sick.
Thank you. It's like 144 of those texture objects that you were talking about liking. I thought I'd just add a section to the video here playing through what each other made. This was my interpretation of the glass theme. I tried to have this big shiny element in the background, which is a lot of object, but uses an area trigger that moves an object from left to right, and when that object gets close to some of the particles in the background, they light up. It's pretty simple, and then I just used a bunch of area effects for these blocks that make them scale up. Actually, I don't even think they scale. I think they just move. The big thing is the area fade here, which goes for the drop shadow behind them as well. And then I just copy pasted these structures a little bit and added a cube section, which goes into a ship with some area scaling blocks, I'm pretty sure. But these things broke at some point. I don't know if that's still kept in the video. And then we have Glace by Subwoofer, which is super cool. Look at the atmosphere here. You slide on from the left, there are a bunch of particles on screen. I love these shiny glass blocks with like the tiny little pieces of glow in them. You can do some cool parkour tricks, but it's just so calm. I love the custom line art too. I'll just gotta run from the start with decent pace just so you can see how this level would normally be played. I think it's really cool. I think we made some decent stuff considering we only made stuff for like an hour. That was a very productive conversation.
I got to say a lot of things that I wanted to say and that I think needed to be said.
I will definitely be listening to that piece of advice you gave me, how I feel about my level's receptions and like publishing it to certain people and stuff like that.
Of course, and I hope I was able to help anybody that had any questions about keeping themselves on top when making levels.
I'm gonna cut this off here. Thank you for joining me. Thank you everyone for watching. Check the links in the description. Subscribe to Subwoofer and yeah. Have a good day, everyone.